Have you ever gotten into one of those arguments with a friend or family member where you're both completely 100% certain you remember something happening a certain way, but your versions are totally different? We all tend to think our memory works like a perfect video camera, just recording everything exactly as it happened. Well, we're going to dig into that, because what science is telling us might just change how you think about, well, your entire life.
Yeah, this really hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? This is the feeling we all have. Our mind is this pristine personal library. We can just wander through the stacks, pull a memory off the shelf, and there it is, untouched just like the day we stored it. It's a really comforting idea. The only problem is, it's a total myth. So let's explore a different idea. What if your brain isn't a passive librarian just filing things away? What if it's an active storyteller? A storyteller that every single time you recall a memory doesn't just replay it, but actually rewrites it a little bit. That's the core idea we're going to get into, and it is a game changer. Okay, so first, let's really tackle this illusion of a perfect memory, the one that we all instinctively trust without a second thought. This really breaks it down nicely. On the one hand, you have the myth we all carry around, that memory is this perfect video archive, built to be accurate. But then you look at the reality, which is honestly so much more interesting. Memory isn't a recording, it's a living biological process. It doesn't store things perfectly, it reconstructs them. And here's the kicker. It was never designed for perfect accuracy. It was designed for survival. It's a tool to help us make better decisions tomorrow, not to perfectly preserve yesterday. So if our brain isn't a camera, what is it? Well, that brings us to the storyteller. Let's get into the fascinating science of how our personal histories actually get built and rebuilt. The big scientific idea here is reconstructive memory. And that word, rebuilt, is everything. It's not like you're opening a file on a computer. No, every time you access a memory, your brain is piecing it back together from all these different bits and pieces of information. And in that rebuilding process, things can change. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Wait, is my brain broken? Is it flawed? But actually, it's the exact opposite. This flexibility, this ability to change, it's not a bug. It's a feature. It's what allows us to update old information, to learn, and to weave a coherent story that helps us make sense of a really complicated world. So if our memories are these stories that are constantly being rewritten, who's doing the editing? Let's meet the silent partners in your brain that are working around the clock, subtly tweaking your past. We're going to start with the editors working from the inside. These are things happening in your own mind, often without you even realizing it. And we're going to focus on three of the most powerful ones: reconsolidation, emotion, and imagination. Okay, first up is reconsolidation, and this one is wild. The simple act of remembering something makes that memory unstable and changeable. Think about it. You recall a happy childhood memory, but today you're feeling a little down. Your brain can actually weave some of today's sadness into that old memory. Then, when it gets resaved a moment later, it's now a little less happy than it was before. This happens every single time you remember something. Next, there's emotion. A strong emotion acts like a super bright spotlight. During a scary event, that spotlight might shine directly on a weapon, making that detail incredibly vivid. But here's the thing about a bright spotlight. It casts really deep shadows on everything else around it, like the person's face or the color of their clothes. Your memory of those details in the dark, it's basically a guess. And then we have imagination. Get this, the neural pathways your brain uses to remember something that actually happened are practically the same ones it uses to imagine something that didn't. They're all tangled up. And because of that overlap, if you vividly imagine an event over and over, your brain can get confused and start to log it as a real memory. The line between what was and what could have been gets incredibly blurry. So our own minds are busy little editors. But the process doesn't stop there. Our memories are also being constantly shaped by powerful forces from the outside world, specifically the people around us and the words we use. This is something called memory conformity, and it's powerful. Imagine you and a friend witness an accident. You remember a green car, but later your friend says, with total confidence, it was definitely a blue car. Their certainty can actually make your brain doubt itself and rewrite your memory to match theirs. We are social animals, and our brains are wired to get in sync with our tribe. And what about language? Well, a memory isn't made of words. It's sights, sounds, feelings. The moment you translate that rich experience into a story for someone else, you have to simplify.
You pick some details, you leave others out, you frame it a certain way. And the more you tell that version of the story, the more that version replaces the original, raw experience. The story literally becomes the memory. All right, finally, let's look at the brain's automatic background processes. These are the editors that are always running, like software, organizing our memories using tools like schemas, confabulation, and just the slow, steady passage of time.
This question gets right to the heart of what schemas are. A schema is like a mental template. You have a template for professor's office, and that template definitely includes books. So even if there were no books in the specific office you saw, your brain might automatically add them into your memory later on, because it just makes the story make more sense. It fills in the blanks with what it expects. And when your brain finds a gap in a memory, it hates leaving it empty. So it does something called confabulation. Now, this is not lying, it's a totally unconscious act. Your brain just invents plausible details to fill in the holes and make the story feel complete and logical. Your brain just wants to tell a good story with no plot holes.
And of course, time itself is a relentless editor. Right after something happens, the memory is usually rich and full of sensory details. But give it a few years and most of those details fade away. What's left is the gist, the general meaning of what happened. Decades later, it's often not even a specific memory anymore. It's just a story, a chapter title in the book of your life that explains who you are. So, we've looked at the how. All the subtle ways our past is constantly being rewritten. But now for the big question. So what? Why does this actually matter? Well, it turns out it changes almost everything. This right here is probably the single most important thing to understand. You know that deep gut feeling of certainty you have about a memory? That feeling that you're absolutely positively right? It has nothing, zero, to do with whether the memory is accurate. That feeling of certainty just means the memory is easy for your brain to access and it feels emotionally right. That's it.
And when you realize that, the real-world implications are huge. It changes how we think about healing from trauma. It completely calls into question the reliability of eyewitness testimony in the justice system. It reframes all those arguments we have with people we love about who said what. And maybe most profoundly, it changes how we see ourselves, our identity, and our very ability to grow and change.
So I want to leave you with this final thought. If your past isn't some fixed, unchangeable recording set in stone, if it's actually a living story that you are actively telling yourself, then that isn't a flaw in the system. That's an incredible opportunity. It means the narrative isn't finished. It means you have a say in how you frame your own story. So the real question isn't just what happened to you, it's what story are you going to choose to tell about it?